Folks, when I say we have devils living amongst us, we really do. And this is a perfect case in point. This is Erin Stroutman, the 26-year-old nurse out of Virginia, working at the Enrico Doctors Medical Center. And she was charged and arrested just a couple days ago with abusing babies. She worked in the neonatal care. And neonatal is defined as the first 26 days, the most vulnerable days of a baby's life. All of the victims that she harmed were in age from 1 week to 2 weeks old. Just unfathomable. But this is the tibia of an x-ray of a 2-week-old. Obviously, you can see the damage. And there was much more damage. 7 victims in total. They're going back to look and see about other cases that were unsolved. But doctors, it got so bad, they consulted with the city and they said, we're not going to allow anybody else to come and have babies here until we find out who's doing the damage. Well, she was the one doing the damage. But she's in jail. She's got a slew of charges against her, and hopefully she'll never get out of prison. Hopefully she goes to prison and she never sees the light of day. Hopefully. That's my wish for the new year. But while I was doing research, I was struck with a thought, a memory. This sounds familiar. This sounds, yeah, okay. The hospital above, Homer G. Phillips. This is the Homer G. Phillips Hospital in St. Louis, a historical marker. Now, Homer G. Phillips was a man in the 1930s who saw the plight of the black people. See, when white people back in the day wanted to go to the hospital for surgery or to have a baby, they would go to a hospital, clean sheets, a doctor taking care of them. But when blacks wanted to go have a baby or get surgery, there was a tent in the middle of a field that was set up for them to have their baby or have a major surgery done. Unfathomable this day. Unfreaking believable. But it's true. And what he did was he raised over $4 million to build a hospital, and they named the hospital after him. And that hospital was built. In 1937, it opened, and it stayed open until 1979. It got more dilapidated and completely shut down. But years later, the city of St. Louis put money into it, refurbished it, and brought it back to its grandeur, and reopened it. Now it's a nursing home today. Now, I was listening to a documentary years ago, and I first heard about this hospital and what Homer G. Phillips had done. And what he had done was he had seen the plight and he said, I need to raise the money. He did. But this hospital wasn't only a hospital, it was also a training facility for doctors, people who wanted to be doctors, people who wanted to be nurses. And it was churning out some of the best doctors and nurses in the entire country, so much that it garnered attention from overseas. And doctors from Europe came to check out this hospital, right? And watch the black surgeons and nurses work. And in fact, there were other white doctors in our country that went to the hospital to see how these black surgeons operated. And one of the stories that's told from the granddaughter of the surgeon who on one specific day, he was doing brain surgery. And there were some white doctors that had came to visit the hospital that were in the gallery. And after the surgery was done successfully, they said, we want to meet those black doctors. So the black doctors, physicians, and nurses went to see the white doctors, and the white doctor said, sir, I want to shake your hand. If somebody would have told me that this could be done by a black surgeon, I would not have believed it. I mean, it's pretty remarkable that a man with the blood of monkeys inside of him can pull off such a feat. When I heard that story, it shook me to my core. And I had this desire to go see this place, like as if it was one of the wonders of the world. And I did. And as I walked into this place, I was greeted by some nurses. I looked around the lobby, and to the left, there's a huge marble slab, and it has the names of the doctors who graduated every year and the nurses, and it churned out hundreds and hundreds of good doctors and nurses. One of the main things that Homer G. Phillips wanted was a place for black women to go have babies. Because there was a huge problem in the 20s and 30s and 40s. Black women were giving birth to babies only to suckle with the child for a few hours, and then the child would be taken away, and then the child would never be brought back. There were thousands of black women who gave birth but never saw their babies again. And when they would ask the white doctors, "Where's my baby?" "Ma'am, you didn't give birth to a baby." And Homer G. Phillips founded this hospital so black women could go give birth in peace and raise their babies. When I looked at the slab and I read all the names, I was surprised to find out that there were Mexican names sporadically put in there. Martinez, Perez, Gonzalez. And I was filled with such joy in my heart that I began to tear up. And one of the nurses asked me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am. I just never knew that Mexicans attended school here also and worked at this hospital." And she said, "Oh, yes." So if you don't know history, you're bound to repeat it. But this was in a segregated time, and blacks had their own. And like Brother Malcolm said, separation was what was needed to keep away from the devils. Funny, just a side note, but right down this street from this hospital, a couple blocks away, there's a small little bitty house. And it's another historical marker, as there was a man that was born in that house. His name was Chuck Berry, and he was the godfather of rock and roll.